Of course, hindsight is 2020, and that's the problem. My name is Sridhar Ramaswamy. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Neva.
And could you explain what Neva is exactly?
Neva is the world's first ads-free private subscription search engine. Now, search is something we just all do instinctively. We don't think about it. Open up our phone and start searching. And what started as a well-intentioned way to organize the world's information now has turned search into a product that's primarily focused on advertisers. Neva is about creating a search product that is exclusively focused on serving you, the customer. We charge a small subscription fee, but in exchange, we never show ads, never show affiliate links, let you customize the product, and we keep everything very private to you. You're in charge of the search experience.
So everything has an origin story of some capacity, and your background was with Google Ads and other elements of what we consider most of the structure of the internet. How did your previous roles influence the creation of this business?
So I was at Google for 15 years, worked in the ads team. I ran the ads team, all of the ads teams at Google, over $120 billion business for over 5 years. I left because I wanted to do something new, but more importantly, I was beginning to feel a real need for products that were customer focused. I just thought that being ad supported meant that the product became more and more about serving advertisers rather than users. And I also objected to the rampant lack of privacy in all of our lives, where every little thing that we do online is packaged up by thousands of companies. We wanted to create a simpler product, but also a better product. Yes, Neva is ads-free and private, but it's also about creating a better experience where you are in charge, whether it is news sources, where you set your preferences for what you like, and soon things like where do you prefer to shop from. We want the search to reflect your desires, your needs, where you're completely in charge. We also do other things like let you index your personal data if you want, so that you can search for all of it from a single search box.
Quality is obviously pretty important, but you're coming into an environment where there are significant players. You have plenty of experience with one of them.
That's right.
My mum thinks Google is the internet. So a lot of people will think our product, usually Google, Facebook, or Apple perhaps, will be the primary structure. How do you break through that? Because that's a kind of a relaxed mindset a lot of people would have, and they mightn't even realize it.
I would say there are actually a fair number of people that are aware that they are being monetized, that free is not free. I think there's a slow but sure realization, but we have our job cut out in terms of reaching that level of awareness for your mom, for my mom. People like that, for whom they don't really think about it. They think about Google as the only way in which things are done. Like with all other products, we start with the tech enthusiasts. Like over 30% of Neva users are from the tech field, and so they're the ones that spread out. But surprisingly, we've also gotten feedback from senior citizens that have used Neva that are very happy because they no longer feel like they're going to be duped by some ads that are promising them crazy things. And so they like the simplicity of the experience. We're actively thinking about doing things like packaging Neva with a VPN, with a password manager, perhaps even online storage. So it becomes more of a compelling, you're in charge of your internet kind of package. So it's easier for people to adopt into a bundle of services like that, which all come with a clear guarantee that they're about you and not about like monetizing advertisers or something else. In many ways, we think of ourselves as tech serving humanity, much simpler tech.
On a little bit of a different note, obviously with your background and your presence and your understanding of the digital ad space online, and I guess how it's shaped your view. I come from a news media background. News media in Europe and the US spent about 10, 15 years
That's right.
at a different gradient of their reliance or understanding of how digital ad spend would help
That's right.
them. And they all at different stages realized it didn't help them, and each one would hop
100%.
off at a different stage.
That's right.
Now you've got different models, like say The Guardian is pay what you want when you want to see. Does that work? New York Times have a more traditional subscription model. National Geographic would have print and digital, and it would be paired up in a weird kind of
The
login
Economist
scenario.
does the same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of these. Do you have an opinion on how news organizations, people who are creating content, of which the big 3 or 4 the dominant internet companies profit from? Do you see a way where they can actually monetize their product for their own good? They're all trying it in different ways, but we could be just at another stage of them not quite knowing that it isn't working.
That's a great question. I think there is one issue for sure that's confronting just like the news industry as a whole, which is that the internet really has zero marginal cost for distribution, meaning that if one newspaper can reach like 1,000 people, it doesn't cost them a whole lot more to reach 100,000. If they can reach 100,000, a million is more. And so what you're seeing is an incredible amount of pressure on, for example, a lot of local newspapers for whom it's just not, they just can't bring the same kind of team as the New York Times or maybe the Washington, or the Wall Street Journal can when it comes to that kind of coverage. That combined with the fact that their offline advertising model essentially is gone. They went away because everything has now moved online. And so I think, so there is an element of consolidation that is bad because important segments of news, like local news, are not really covered. As you know, like corruption is way more endemic in local government than it is in central government. There's just more scrutiny. And so I think that is pretty rough. But when it comes to news monetization itself, I think we will look back on like, the last 15 odd years and think like, how could these newspapers think that this model of everything will be ad supported was going to work out? Remember, this is like they placed pixels from Google and Facebook from other companies. They essentially gave away their monetization, their relationship with customers over to other companies. You're like, this is a model that could not have worked. Both Google and Facebook, they were always very protective about their own data. There's no third-party pixel on Google. There's no third-party pixel on Facebook. And so in some sense, the tech companies were better at figuring out monetization at scale than the newspaper companies. And I think what you're seeing is like a consolidation back to one-on-one relationship. It's like, I need to have a relationship with you if I want you as a customer. I need to make sure that you're a happy customer. Hopefully, I hope there is a positive outcome on that side. But at the end of the day, I also have like a really hard time figuring out what like a sustainable model for like a San Jose Mercury News is, or even the San Francisco Chronicle, which are the two newspapers next to where I live. I think it's just hard to find the right niche for these kinds of things. Ironically, by the way, local TV stations in the US are doing just fine. You know why? They carry things like lots of election advertising. And so in a weird way, they have become the only mechanism to reach people locally, but the newspapers are not doing as well.
I just want to move on to privacy, but briefly on that, the experience of you and your team prior to your present venture played a role in the creation of what you're describing, how Google and Facebook and one or two other companies were ahead of the game.
Yep.
Is there any responsibility or remorse? Is that kind of what drives any of this? That there's a structure where news media has been of its own volition and others gutted of any financial viability or some financial viability. And if you follow where the money has gone, it's gone to the people who have performed better on constructing their internet capacity, their internet existence. So is that a feeling that's ever felt in, say, the upper echelons of higher tech, maybe?
This is a tough question. At one level, the answer is yes. Most senior management in most of these companies, they love news. They're news junkies. I am. I've always had multiple subscriptions for all kinds of things. I was like, I grew up in India on like the Hindu and the Indian Express. This is what we did every single morning, like read it cover to cover. And so many people that are in the top management in these companies definitely feel that. On the other hand, I don't think they feel responsible for the business model of news not working, or the choices that the news companies made about how they monetize. Clearly, the Wall Street Journal stood this out from day one and said, only subscriptions. We don't give our stuff away for free. And so I don't particularly feel like the tech companies are going to feel remorseful about this. And the kind of example that comes to mind as a comparison is the Yellow Page industry, as you know, disappeared without a trace. The tech companies feel no remorse about that as well. And you can argue the morality and the ethics of some of these things, But a lot of tech companies simply think of themselves as bringing efficiencies, and as that efficiency in general sort of helping the economy along. And so I would say news is a situation in which, looking back, the fundamental model of outsourced ads monetization like simply doesn't make any sense. Of course, hindsight is 2020, and that's the problem. The thing that these companies did was they invested in their ads monetization. They were in charge of the customer experience, both the ad side and on like the organic content side. That's the essential ingredient of their success. I'm sure you know that in many newspapers, the lowest intersection of the person that's driving the ads and the person that's driving the news is the CEO. Because the revenue division is often separate from the news divisions. Those are not things that are like super customer focused, but I think a lot of newspapers now get like, subscriptions, customer relationships are the ones that are going to create and keep their success.
Yeah, I get that. Just it's clear the timeline when one prospers, the other struggles, and I just was curious to know, is it ever really a thought process going through? But I just want to move before we run out of time just onto privacy, because obviously that plays a significant role in the creation of this business. Do you feel you've discussed the 20 years of internet, so 10 years then, 10 years now. How do you feel the maturity level of the average internet user is with regards to how they understand their data? In Europe, we have the GDPR change that came in a few years ago that changed not as much as perhaps people think, but enough to be significant. In the US, you've had quite a few changes as well in the last 15, 20 years in how data is processed. They don't quite marry up together well, but because they don't marry up together well, they get an awful lot of coverage. So people are gradually learning a bit more about potentially what their value is.
Yep.
But do users know how much they're valued compared to what, say, a digital advertising company would know what someone's value is? Because the maturity of that will have a key role in whether or not people are willing to, say, subscribe to a service like Neva.
Well, I think privacy is a squishy concept. People are uncomfortable with things like ads popping up on social media right after they look for something. But none of them, not even tech people, have the time or the patience to weed through what this all actually means. And in the context of Neva, what we have to do is create a superior search experience, which happens also to be completely ads-free, to also be private. I think selling privacy alone as a product is a very niche thing because people don't even agree on what privacy means. And so I would say there is a lot of discomfort. There is a lot of unhappiness with things like how large these tech companies are. As I'm sure you know, they make more revenue than most countries make in GDP. And so I think there is a realization that that kind of concentration of power is not a good thing. But I don't think people have any capacity to put like dollar numbers next to, next to privacy, especially when the dollar number is split across a Facebook and a Google and someone else. It just becomes very hard for people to, to like instinctively understand these things, which is also why I think that vague schemes to give back ads revenue generally don't really find any uptake. It's just too hard to understand. And it's important that you lead with a better model that has a lot of benefits as opposed to trying to make privacy into a product.
Okay, that's everything from me.
Thank you. These are great questions.
Thanks very much.